So we have this over here, the little thing in our toolbox over here. We can select a frame. So that's a frame. If we have, just say, 3 objects, we can group them or you can frame them. And there's our group. Then we have like a selection. So we have 3 different concepts. So a group is one right here. Groups are really a great way to combine layers into a single element. They simplify the layers panel and give you a single object you can interact with on the canvas. So that means that when you have this kind of group, you can do anything you want. Great for things like logos and stuff like that. For example, if you have a collection of shapes that you want to stick together and you don't want to worry about things like constraints, groups are essentially a collection of layers and not distract elements, so they don't have dimensions or properties um, problems. When you make changes to a group, you actually applying those changes to each layer in the group. So things like if you're going to move it, all the layers are going to move. If you're going to rotate it, all layers are rotating. So that's our group over here, our collection of elements. And you can nest group inside frames, and you can nest frames out. So the frames are going to be the main thing you use essentially to build out UI. So frames are another way to combine layers. In Figma, frames can act as a scaffolding for a specific device or screen. If I press F, I can pick like an iPhone 14 or 15 Pro or higher, obviously. And so that's my frame. We're going to use that frame more than groups. So frames can act like the scaffolding for a specific device screen size, like a single page in an app design. So they can act as containers for layers that make up distinct elements like the layers in a navigation bar. And you can even put frames inside another frames, like unlike groups, frames can have dimensions and properties and their own like fills, rounded corners. So I can essentially like create a new fill in here with a group. I can do that. Let me see. I'm changing all the properties. I'm giving the stroke all the properties over there with the frame that I can nest like things inside it, but the frame itself is the one that's getting all the properties, not the frame inside of anything inside. So they can have their own fills, rounded corners, shadows. They can also features. And they also have features like auto layout and constraints and layout grids. So I give you a sneak peek of what constraints look like for items. But if you like auto layout, this is a great way to make really responsive designs. So I can fill containers. I can make this now like super responsive. If I have text and build out the auto layout container, super important. You can also put things like layout grids. If you want a grid inside your frame, maybe not this 10 pixel grid, but you can have like columns like this. Now selection, we have seen over here. We can also see it like my prototypes over here. But with sections. The section tool allows you to designate and label a specific region of the canvas. We can also call this one like a test, or like my V1 version 1. And I can make another one. It's my V2. It's like a collection of items, right? You can use selections to group related concepts and ideas, or organize your designs in sections. Help to draw, focus, give context, guide all your collaborators through processes. They're perfect for activities like reviews or sharing designs for handoff. So I like to do this. When I'm done with my design, I like to mark it ready for div so they know this is ready. There are differences between groups, frames, and sections. So constraints are like, say this is our frame. I'm going to have a rectangle in the middle of our frame. So there's different ways that you can deal with constraints. Constraints tell Figma how layers should respond when you resize their frame. They help you to control how design look across different devices and sizes. So I say I have this one is my another frame with or other pieces of content. They are stacked within this frame. Right now you have a couple of different things. You have your horizontal constraints, which are the constraints that defines how a layer behaves as you resize the frame along the axis. And then you have your vertical constraints, which defines how a layer behaves along the axis. And we have top and bottom. And this one I'm going to make sure is going to be left, right, top, and bottom. And this one's going to be left, right, top, and bottom. And let's see how this resizes. You can tell that they both resize properly. But what happens if I don't care about the bottom? So I just want to be left and right. And that's fine. It doesn't scale anything with the bottom one. So that's great. And there's another way that we can deal with the constraints, right? You can apply constraints to any layer within a frame. It's not possible to apply constraints to layers outside of the frame. As you can tell here, I don't have the same those same constraints options because they're not inside the frame or layers within an auto layout frame. So if I say make this an auto frame, they don't have constraints anymore because they're not responsive frame, but we'll get into that later. So if you want to ignore your constraints, you can do that as well. So sometimes you may want to resize the frame or the layers without using the constraints that are applied to it. You can temporarily ignore any constraints applied to a layer within here. So these layers, by holding down the modifier key, in that case, you're an Apple user, is going to be comment. If you're a window user, use Option. So we hold down the comment. We notice where I'm resizing this frame. And now finally, it's working here. But if I hold comment again, it's not working. Again, without comment, it's working. So you can do that sometimes just to make sure that you don't want to mess around. With the actual items within, you don't want them to resize or anything. That's what constraints are within Figma. So this is a great way to make slightly responsive designs. So we'll use this as well, so we can showcase this to you in a project.